We continue to recap Media Day comments. We'll start with Miles Bridges, whether he'll be back next season. Does he want to be back next season? So much more. All today, Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, just like always, including YouTube. There's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, where he watched every single second of Hornets basketball this year, and he's not going to get rewarded for it. It was one of the tweets of the year, and everybody felt his pain. It was so funny when you tweeted out that you had seen every second of Hornets basketball and that your reward was in heaven, not here on earth. Unfortunately, everybody felt your pain, and they either liked it, they retweeted it, and then also shared your pain, or they commented just to make sure that you were doing okay. But you brought a lot of people together through the terribleness that is Hornets basketball.
Well, I'm trying to study the few, viral relative to the Hornets universe that we're in, viral tweets that I've had. And so one of them being that one, and the other one being the Muscle Watch post that I did, the comparison post.
A little different. Yeah, that one went viral for a different reason. Yeah.
But it's different, but I think both of them are very similar in that they tap into the sickness. They tap into the sickness of the hope that something is coming in the future. It's the thing that just sort of ties us down. And I think that's the key motivating factor on these tweets is like, is it tapping into the sickness? Does it talk about the hope? But also recognizing the deep well of despair that we've been in as fans of a sports team for the past, 10, 15 years.
The entire existence. Yes. I'm Walker Mail, by the way. Listen to me on WFNZ from 12 to 3 every weekday, 92.7 FM. You're right. It does tap into the sickness. So now we're trying to figure out what this team is going to look like next year. Doug, Miles Bridges, he's been really the talk of the season in terms of the biggest wild card of what could happen with their future, right? And if we go with LaMelo, Mark, Brandon Miller, we know they're going to be locked in as long as they're healthy. They're pretty much going to be locked in next season. We don't know what's going to happen with these guys they acquired during the trade deadline, with Vasa Micic, with Trey Mann having a team option on him. Don't know what's going to happen with Poku. But then you start to get to the other important players. Miles is the one where at the deadline thought he might get traded, and then he wasn't. So now he's here, but he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. And he said all along that he wants to be here. In fact, he was asked again in exit interview day, and Miles Bridges talked about him wanting to be here, saying, quote, "I love the city of Charlotte. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Grew up here, been here since I was 20. I've been through a lot here. It's like a family to me. It's home to me. I want to be like Steph, Kobe, Dirk, staying and winning with the team." Well, you're staying. You've got the staying part down. We don't have the winning part down. We would also love for this team to win like some of those squads the other stars played for. But he's been steadfast in his desire to play here in Charlotte, Doug.
Yeah, but he was quick to follow up with the NBA is a business. And I think that's really what this conversation comes down to. Sure, he would love to stay in Charlotte. And I believe him when he says something to the effect of, the Hornets organization stood by me. They didn't have to through all, everything that happened with the felony domestic violence charges. The Hornets could have, parted ways with him and not gone through that whole process up to the signing of the qualifying offer, but they did, and I think that does mean something to Miles. But when it all comes down to it, there's going to be a negotiation between Jeff Peterson and his team and Rich Paul and Miles Bridges and his entire team. And that coming together of minds between the Hornets and his team resulted in Miles Bridges signing a qualifying offer, not a one-year deal, not an actual deal, not a multi-year deal. It was a qualifying offer. And so it's something that doesn't happen very often. So now you get into unrestricted free agency, and there are going to be teams vying for his services, and it's all going to be about the dollar amount and the risk tolerance that this team has for somebody that missed an entire season and 10 games the following season. And what they feel like is the, likelihood that he's going to reach the levels, not the level that he was at when they were about to sign him. They thought he was going to go to another level. That's why they were about to give him, close to a max deal. But his numbers did recede in terms of efficiency, and we can run through some of the numbers.
Yeah.
Those numbers did now some of the sort of top line, if you just look at the production, it's similar, but if you dig a little deeper into the numbers, there's a recession there, and there was a recession in athleticism too. And so, what are you? I think it's going to be very difficult to figure out a number, and I almost wonder if the Hornets are going to have to really wait to see what some of these other teams are going to throw at him and then make a call, as opposed to saying, okay, well, this is what we value you at.
Well, and Miles said, Willie P from WFNZ asked him, Miles, what do you think you proved this year? It was the only question, Doug, that was framed in a way where there were possible off-court answers to come, and maybe in a way of, when he talked about staying here in Charlotte, they stuck with me. There was some off-court alluding to his felony domestic violence arrest there. But when Willie asked him, what do you think you proved? I thought maybe he would say, well, after the beginning of the season, everything else was okay. Didn't get in any trouble. Like I just didn't know if he would take us that way. But instead, what he answered was on the court, well, I can take a year off and I can come back and my numbers damn near stay the same. And, that's one way to take that question. But you're right. Like, they weren't exactly the same. There were some that were very similar, and you're right about that too. But if we just want to go through the counting stats, and then we can get through some of the advanced metrics as well. But he averaged 21 points per game this year. He averaged 20 in 2021, 2022, the last time he played. He got to the foul line on one foul shot less per game this year. Shot about the same, 82%, 80% the last time he played. His overall field goal percentage was 49 2 years ago. It's 46 this year. And the three-point percentage, Doug, like his three-point shooting has pretty much been the exact same throughout his career, except for one season, and that was 2020, 2021, when he was a very good three-point shooter. But every other year, it's been basically the same if you look at the advanced metrics, and he did shoot a little bit better just overall this season. If you look at the counting stats and look at his three-point efficiency there, he shot 35%. He shot 33 in 2021, 2022. Those are the numbers. Like, I guess some of it's a little better, but like the overall efficiency, him talking about himself being a 3-level scorer, which is what Steve Clifford said he wanted Miles to work on. I don't know. Like you're right. You don't play for a whole year. I didn't know how much rust was going to be there, but there were lots of similarities in who he was as a player, Doug. But I didn't view him certainly as a better player this year than what I had seen him in years past.
No, for sure. And I think what makes this decision really difficult for the Hornets is that there were a lot of extenuating circumstances, and there is a lot of context when you study these numbers. I thought it was interesting during his interview, he pointed to the fact that Clifford wanted him to work on becoming a 3-level scorer, which could account for in a lost season, or a season that they were sort of, constantly injured. There probably was opportunities to take certain players and say, all right, normally we would want you to do X, but because now you're playing a ton more minutes and we're going to rely on you for a lot of offense, now all of a sudden you can't just shoot threes and catch and shoot three opportunities. You're going to have to put the ball in. We're going to have to put the ball in your hands because you're one of the better players, and everybody else is injured, and you're going to have to score in a variety of ways. So that could account for the really large increase in mid-range shots that he took this season, and not a lot of them went in. So there may have been some expansion of the game that would not have happened had LaMelo, been dominating the ball a lot more, had Mark Williams been healthy for most of the season. And then the number of minutes he played, he cited that, when talking about the fact that he's not dunking as much. He was going to the rim. He was missing a lot early in the season. That seemed to frustrate him. And then that, to me, sort of coincided with his uptick in mid-range shots. When he was going to the rim and missing and getting frustrated, not getting foul calls, which didn't get any better as the season went on, because we all know the NBA, decided, hey, we're not going to call as many fouls anymore. And so then he started to take a lot of mid-range shots. That wasn't great for his efficiency. So you take all of that, you put it in a box, but what do you do with that if you're the team? Do you go, well, LaMelo's not, we hope LaMelo's not going to be hurt. Mark gets healthy. Can Miles Bridges turn into the player that we wanted him to be before the felony domestic violence charges, and we didn't really get a chance to see that player at all. Oh, also, he missed a year. He wasn't dunking as much. Other teams are going to be making offers. This is super tough is all I'm saying. Like, no, I don't know what you do with all of that.
Well, and we've looked at the free agent class. It's not good. Miles is going to be one of the better free agents just from a talent standpoint. And one other thing before we move on, just to fit this last Miles point. Miles admittedly understands the athleticism wasn't there as much. He wasn't dunking as much this year. And we've talked about it before. He was on social media after somebody said he's not dunking as much. He said, yeah, you're right. I'm going to try to work on that. And it never really came for him. You look at his numbers, and he was average in the entire league at his position, finishing at the rim. He was average. Usually, he's very good. And then you look at where he's taking his shots this season. Doug, yeah, he was taking a decent amount of shots. He was in the 62nd percentile shooting at the rim, but he's in the 78th percentile long mid-range jumpers, 70th percentile all mid-range jumpers. That's up from the highest he had been with all mid-range jumpers. He was in the 40th percentile the last time he played a year. Like, it's so many more mid-range jumpers. So if you're going to try to keep this guy, the biggest advantage to having Miles on your team is because he's such a violent finisher at the rim, because he gets to the rim easy, especially when he gets a full head of steam rolling downhill. But if he struggles because he can't get up like he used to and he can't slam those home, and so now the efficiency is down to just an average basketball player at the basket, and you're taking a lot more shots in the mid-range, and that's obviously not helping your efficiency. But the athleticism doesn't come back at 27, 28, 29. Then how much money is he worth if you don't get the really good player that you were getting 2 years ago that you were going to pay $30 million to? They're going to do that. So that's the question that I have. How does the team evaluate it? And you're right. It's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah. Will there be a team that offers him a lot of money? That's question number one. If that doesn't happen, what will he and his team be willing to accept? Because I think it's interesting that he brings up Steph, Kobe, Dirk staying and winning with the team, because he had an opportunity this season to prove, not that he was on that tier, because I think that tier's, you know if a player's going to be on that tier way before this point in someone's career. But he had an opportunity this season with all the injuries to prove that he could carry a team on his own, and he can't. And that's not even a slight on him necessarily. That's the reality for 95% of the players in this league. But those top 5%, those are the players that you pay max money to. Those are the players you pay a lot of money to. And so will he be able to come to terms with that? Will the team be able to come to terms with that? And will another team sort of poison the well? We'll have to see.
Let's move on. We have plenty more comments to get through here. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We'll get to Steve Clifford comments and what his new role is going to be. I don't even know if Steve Clifford knows, but we'll get to at least some of the things that he wants to do in the front office. That's still to come here on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Classic, exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch high-definition touchscreen informant system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. You also have the 2024 Nissan Armada on the market. It will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. You can tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. This episode is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. Guys, I need you to listen. I need you to listen up for a huge announcement.
I'm listening.
I've been tracking leaderboards every day.
Okay.
Been keeping my eye on the scores, putting all my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce that I'm finally on top. That's right. I'm obviously talking about Monopoly Go, the hit new mobile game, Monopoly Go. You've probably heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on a classic Monopoly board game. You can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon. Goodness gracious, there's all over the place. All while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties, just like Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties, or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks, Miley Cyrus style. It doesn't matter. So many ways to play. But my favorite part is the leaderboards, where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
I'm proud of you.
Doug, the coaching pool, it's starting to dry up just a little bit with a couple of the names that have been announced to different jobs. So the Hornets have been going through a thorough process. It reminds me a lot of what they did in the process where it eventually led to James Borrego. I like that process. They interviewed a lot of people. Of course, they interviewed Jay Larranaga, which a coaching search doesn't start until you interview him. And so we've already checked that box off. Good news. They've already done that. Jordy Fernandez was in the pool. So was Kevin Young. We had some information for you on both of those candidates a couple of episodes ago, but they're no longer available. Jordy Fernandez, the assistant coach with the Sacramento Kings, he is now going to be the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets next season. That announcement came just a few days ago. And then Kevin Young, he got a head coaching job as well, but not in the NBA. He's going to BYU.
Wow.
Yeah, very interesting. Mark, it feels like, poor Kentucky, just a sidebar about Kentucky. It feels like in the musical chairs that was college basketball head coaching vacancies, and now even the NBA is involved, that somehow Kentucky got the worst coach and BYU upgraded. BYU lost their coach to Kentucky, and it feels like the Cougars might have upgraded with Kevin Young. The Wildcats, it didn't go well for them this offseason.
Well, so Kentucky, I think, there you go. There's an example of a team that struck quickly, but maybe struck out. You know, so if you're worried in this instance of the Hornets maybe waiting a little too long as some of these names come off the board, I think there is some importance to getting the right guy. And as valued as Jordy Fernandez was and as valued as Kevin Young was, maybe those – look, if the guy doesn't want to be here, by the way, you know, we just went through this with Kenny Atkinson. You got to make sure the guy actually wants to be here, number one. But then you have to make sure that he and Jeff Peterson and that the owner, that they're all on the same page. So maybe the top guy isn't going to be the guy that is totally aligned with what the Hornets are trying to do. So I think it's important that they go through this process. They did add some names as well. Jordan Ott from Los Angeles. Jerry Stackhouse, obviously UNC ties. I mean, this if it's Stackhouse, then I'm going to then put on the tinfoil hat and say that while Michael Jordan only owns 3% of the team, he is shadow governor of the team. He is the emperor, behind everything. And then Royal Ivey also from the I believe the Raptors, the Rockets.
Oh, man, well, what a blast from the past. Like, if you like college basketball, then you love Stackhouse and Royal Ivey being in this mix, because Royal Ivey was a part of the Texas Longhorns. I got a rookie chrome basketball card of Royal Ivey a long time ago. Great stuff. Just blast from the past here.
By the way, on the Jordan Ott thing, because I thought there was a little Ott that name coming up. I said, Jordan Otts. Yeah, sure. I knew he was with the Lakers staff, and I was like, what's going on there? And then you only have to do a little reading before you get down to this. Before he was on the Brooklyn Nets staff, so there's a Peterson connection. But before that, he was video coordinator with the Atlanta Hawks.
Of course, there's always
it's Kevin
connection.
Bacon. They're with everyone that they hire from now for the next 10 or 15 years. It's going to be 6 degrees of Atlanta Hawks.
I was talking about that on Ovius and Giglio, like that there's a lot of Hawks connections. Does it bother you? Or because the way I framed it was, yeah, okay, there's a lot of Hawks connections. It's not like they were crazy successful. There's a reason all these guys are available. Some of them just left. It's not like Jeff Peterson got fired. I think he just left for the Nets organization anyway. But at least they got to an Eastern Conference Finals. They did hit on a star pick. It makes sense to take the trade package from Dallas, move back, and then still get somebody that has a lot of trade value. So it's not like they did bad things in Atlanta. I like some of the processes that they went through. But do you still get a little wary that they're going so much in the Atlanta Hawks direction?
No, this is a connections business. Okay. I mean, you go with what you know, and you build an organization, especially when you're revamping an organization, which they are doing it slowly, but that's what they are doing. It's not just sort of Saturday Night Massacre style, we're going to clean house kind of thing, but suddenly every time you walk into the house, something's a little bit different. The refrigerator has been replaced. Now there's new cabinetry. It's just slowly that's
what's happening to my house right now.
That's why you're doing it from 10 different locations this season. I'm not mad. So that's what's happening, and this is a connections business. So this is what was obviously going to happen. Now, again, and I've said this multiple times on the show, if things don't work out over the next couple of seasons, when you hire all of your friends, then the criticism is going to go right to the top, right to Schnall, right to Plotkin. When you approach things like this and you don't go and hire people that you really don't have connections with, and you do bring those new voices in, then you have the built-in excuse of like, well, we tried this, it didn't work. No. You knew this person. You brought all these people in. This is on you.
That's right, which is a beautiful thing. We can continue to go right to the top. Now, an authority
Now we
figure,
have to pick one because there's two of them, but we can pick one of them. I guess you point to Schnall because he was the Hawks guy.
Well, and you point to Schnall because you have this weird agreement that they have like the 50.01% control for one of these guys, and then it switches after every 5 years. So Rick Schnall, are they going to get rid of all the Hawks ties when Plotkin takes over after this 5-year run for Schnall? And then Plotkin just, all right, you tried your Hawks thing, it didn't work. We're going after, I don't know, Wall Street. That's what we're going. We're going to Melvin Capital, and we're hiring all these guys.
Hiring Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett. Is he still alive? We'll hire him. And
Warren, run our team. Yes, that's exactly what Plotkin's going to do. An authority figure now within the franchise is Steve Clifford. Do you want to talk about Steve here? Or do you want to wait till the last segment, Doug?
No, let's we'll talk about his comment, because you had some interesting questions for Steve Clifford, because we know he's staying with the organization. Now there's going to be a new coach. You got the old coach with the new coach. Is that going to be a problem? That's what I want to know.
Well, right. So I asked him about whether he would be a part of the coaching search, because the whole time I think Steve Clifford has been, telling the truth, in that there's so many different ways to build a team. You have to let the coach do it the way that he wants to, without a whole lot of prying. And I do believe that Cliff is going to be hands off. He's going to have his own ideas, and maybe I'm naive to that. Maybe just something within Steve takes control. I can be naive. That's fair. But I do think Steve wants, at least he has the right intention to want to back off. I think he wants to do that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he's also going to be a part of the coaching searching. He's going to be a part of the interview process. And he said that he would be a little bit. And so I thought that was interesting. I asked him, hey, how much are you going to be involved? And he said, yeah, I've talked to a few guys, and he likes all of them. What did you think about Steve Clifford being a part of the coach search process?
Walker, I'm of two minds on this whole idea of keeping Steve Clifford around the building and how it's going to influence the next staff. And I will tell you those two minds coming up.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
All right, let's just go right into it. We'll talk about Steve Clifford staying a part of the team, not only looking for a new coach, but he wants to be a part of the draft, and he wants to do so pretty badly. We'll get to all of that in just a moment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Okay, you have a couple of different thoughts on the Steve Clifford sticking around thing, Doug. What are those thoughts?
So just as it relates to the head coaching search and eventual head coaching hire, I think this is an interesting situation because you have Steve Clifford, who is still respected by most, if not all, of the players in the locker room. They all, tripped over themselves to compliment what Steve has done for them, despite all of the injuries and the trials that this team has experienced while he's been shepherding them. So you've got that, but what you don't have are results. Like, this isn't a situation where a coach that has taken a team to a final, Brad Stevens, stepping back, a coach that takes the team to the conference finals or the finals and then steps back into a front office role. And I think you're right that Clifford respects the holy job of head coach of the NBA. So I think he will do everything in his power to not influence that process. But here's the problem. What if they hire a new coach and that coach comes in, they lose a bunch of games, and they lose those games because there's a disconnect between a head coach who's probably going to be a head coach for the first time in that person's life, unless they go Budenholzer, and we haven't heard anything about Budenholzer, but if he sneaks into the process, then that's the only exception. But it's going to be somebody who's doing this for the first time. What if they get into the job and go, whoops, I'm not good at this, and the players sense that, they smell that immediately, and then you've got dad. It's like you were coached by your dad, and then you go to college or you go to an AAU program. All of a sudden, you're coached by this other person who isn't as good, and you go running back to dad and be like, "Dad, this guy doesn't know what he's doing." You know what I'm saying? And so he's going to be in the building. There will be that opportunity, and it's going to be tempting. And while I think that Clifford will respect it, the problem is we've seen Clifford leave the coaching world before, after Orlando, go to Brooklyn and do the thing with where he was like a consultant, and then he got the itch again. And so there's nothing that tells me, hey, that itch is not going to return at some point. I'm just saying that's a lot of what ifs. A lot of things have to fall into place for those bad things to happen. But I'm just saying, when you keep the old head coach around, you are, whatever percentage probability of that happening, you are opening yourself up to that.
No, they're what ifs, Doug, but it's not. I mean, I don't know what the odds on all that happening are, but it doesn't feel like it's, plus 3,000. Like, if we want to stick with the betting day and age,
let's get FanDuel on this.
If you want to put the FanDuel odds on all that happening, like, it'd be what, plus like 500? Like, it's still not expected to happen, but like what you just said isn't crazy.
Right, because it's the opportunity for dysfunction. That's what this is. As much as I love Clifford and respect him and think that he could do some interesting things in the front office, I think he has a nose for which players do things the right way in the draft. If he was the czar of finding players that do it the right way, I think it would be great at that job with any other organization. But you're opening yourself up to dysfunction. That's all. There's a reason why when you have new owners and new front offices that everybody else goes, because there is a benefit to having a clean slate. It doesn't open yourself up to these conflicts of interest, and I think there's a possibility of that happening here.
The good news is, knowing who Steve is as a dude, everybody respecting Steve Clifford, as long as Steve Clifford has the right messaging. No, it doesn't fix everything, because you're right. You're still going to have that dynamic of what the player thinks. And if he doesn't think the head coach knows what he's doing, even if he goes to Steve and Steve tells that player, it doesn't matter, do what he's doing because I believe in this guy, there's still going to be that little bit of doubt, even with the best of messaging from Steve Clifford. Even if that's still all true, I do think if Clifford does give that messaging, then it's going to give this thing a fighting chance, which I think helps me a lot. Plus, as far as being comfortable. Plus, the whole draft stuff, there's been a couple examples of Steve getting this thing right, man. We can all go to Donovan Mitchell. Steve apparently was a huge drive. Not that they made the decision because Cliff wanted Brandon Miller, but Cliff was team Brandon the entire way. There was not any ifs, ands, or buts about it.
We all were, to be fair.
We all were. You're right about that. We all got this immediately correct, and Steve Clifford was one of them. In fact, I think he followed us on our opinions on that. Mm-hmm. But he's gotten it right in critical positions too, and we haven't really. Look, I don't know if it gets out if you get the decision wrong. There's something to be said there. But if Steve Clifford really can't find that dog, and he's found it in Donovan Mitchell and Brandon Miller, then yeah, and he's excited about it. Doug, this goes back to the other question. he actually led me into it for the follow-up. He said, look, I'm excited about the draft. It's a different world to me, but I'm really excited. I got involved like a very tiny bit in Brooklyn, or at least just got to see the process with Jeff Peterson. But Doug, he loves that stuff. Like, he's really excited about it. I asked him about being a scout or being a film junkie, and he kind of joked that, the traveling is too much for him to bear anymore. And so he's just going to grind film like he has his entire career, and actually lost too much sleep because he was such a film grinder. But is that going to happen in the draft? Like, he smiles ear to ear, man. Like, he's like a kid in a candy store with this draft stuff. And I'm excited about that for him too. It'll be, if the expectations are matched with what he anticipates, right, then I think he's going to be cool just doing this front office thing and being a part of the draft and making sure the team drafts the right player.
We should find out his role at some point, right? It is kind of strange that we're all talking about Steve Clifford everyone's talking about it, but there's been no pen to paper. We learned that with the Kenny Atkinson thing. Never say never. So and Mitch Kupchak is still part of the organization, but we don't really know what his. It's all very weird. I'm just going to say that. But here's my advice for Steve Clifford: if you want to be part of this draft stuff, I know you didn't want to be part of the cap stuff because it's complicated, but I got news for you, buddy. There are some complicated aspects to this draft, including the lottery odds. I've got a Twitter exchange here from Sam Purley and someone at KevyD28. Starting with Sam Purley, he says, as it relates to the fact that the Hornets and the Portland Trailblazers are tied at 21 wins apiece, they've got to do a tiebreaker that I think is going to happen in just a few days, somewhere in the April 19th to 21st period, this into the play-in kind of thing. They're going to break this tie between the Portland Trailblazers and the Charlotte Hornets, and whoever wins that will get the third best odds. But it might not be 14% odds at getting the first overall pick. And here's Sam Purley. From my understanding, one team doesn't receive the 14% odds, and the other the 12.5% odds at the number one pick, the normal third and fourth separation. One will get 13.3% and the other 13.2%, which will then also be used to slot their order in the second round. To which at KevyD28 replies, however, the second round order is actually in reverse of the first round. For example, if Portland wins number 3 and Hornets number 4 in the tiebreaker, they will pick in reverse order in the second round with Hornets picking first. Not that it matters for the Hornets here because they don't own their second rounder. To which Sam replies, yes, the Hornets' 2024 second round pick will go to either Portland or Denver. Charlotte originally traded it to New Orleans on draft night in 2020 in exchange for Nick Richards' draft rights. Hornets do have Houston's second round pick, which they got from Oklahoma City at the trade deadline. Is everyone clear? Steve, are you clear on all of that?
We got it. It's all good. I will say the big thing to take away there, at least in the first round, is that the whole winning an extra game at the end of the season doesn't seem to have, really hurt them all that much. I guess I didn't know who the other teams were in the mix. Maybe that isn't exactly true, but at least you're not going to lose a whole % chance with the flip of a coin. Instead, it's just going to be right there with Portland with the 13.3, 13.2. So,
and again, if you get 1, 2, 3, even 4 at this point,
that's right.
This is as crapshooty. All drafts, except for the ones that have the Wembanyama LeBron type of player, all drafts are crapshooty. But this one is the crapshootiest of the crapshoots.
This one is totally, what was it, 2013? 2013 with Anthony Bennett. Cody Zeller was the Bobcat. That's one of the things about Cody. Cody Zeller was the Bobcats draft pick, and it was totally fine, even in hindsight. If you look at, unless you do the whole Giannis thing, which is stupid because everybody passed up on Giannis before he selected at 15. But if you look at Cody Zeller being drafted 4th overall, totally fine draft pick compared to everybody else that was drafted after him. Like you can make a case for doing it again. That's what this draft feels like, Doug. And this thing changes all the time, but this one feels the weirdest of all of them. You're right. The crapshootiest.
Well, and to go to connect all of these dots that we've been placing here, going back to Clifford, while I do think that it opens you up to dysfunction, if you can have him and anyone else on your staff that can dig into the tape, get into some interviews with players, and determine, what is that one thing that everybody else is missing on this player? And psychology is one of those gaps that a lot of franchises have in terms of figuring out what players are going to come in, have the right attitude, want to improve, day after day and make their game better. Clifford seems to have a nose for what type of player that is. Now, to the frustration of a lot of people, he doesn't like to play those players early on in their career. But
if they got the dog in him, he does.
He does.
Yeah. Like
he does.
If you got it, he does.
And so if he can find that wrinkle in one of these like list of 14 people who could be in line for these top 3 picks, then that would be an asset to the organization.
Yeah, it would be. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. Free and available anywhere you get your podcast. Tell us why you're laughing, Doug. Right,
because
right
now I figured out his role. He should be the czar of dogging him. His title should be the director of dogging him.
What about the dog catcher? Can we call him the dog catcher? Is that a pretty good? I like that nickname. Steve Clifford, the dog catcher out there. I like him with the net. There should be, I picture the photo of him, if you just isolate it in that photo with him and Mitch Kupchak staring at the camera, being scared like they're seeing ghosts. He was looking at the haunted house that he was about to coach this season in that photo. But I picture him in a dog catcher suit with a net like this.
Yeah,
that's what I picture Steve Clifford like.
I love it. Vice president of Built Different.
That's his new role.
We got now. If you had now, we should now. This is a perfect opportunity to prompt our audience to go to YouTube, subscribe, like the videos, and then in the comments give us your suggestions for what Steve Clifford's title should be. And I'm opening up now I'm realizing now I'm opening up some negative ones, and that's okay.
Look,
that's okay.
Anytime you do it, anytime you ask for fan engagement, there's always going to be that faction that has some, some ill intent. So you just got to open it up, and then we'll comb through it all. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Again, thanks for making us your first listen. Free and available anywhere you get your pods, including YouTube. Go check out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Listen to me on the radio, WFNZ 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.